السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى وسلم على سيدنا محمد سيدنا وسندنا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا ومولانا صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذرياته وأهل بيته ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. So we continue with our dars, trying to drive to finish this Babu Jumal al-Fara'idi والسنن الواجبة والرغائب. Inshallah, before the beginning of Ramadan. Inshallah, once Ramadan starts, we're probably going to suspend this particular dars and we will continue it afterward if Allah Ta'ala gives us an opportunity. But at least we should finish this chapter. There are a couple more abwab in the Kitab Jami' of the Risala of Ibn Abi Zayd, which if we get a chance, inshallah, we'd be happy to get a chance to read it together and benefit from it. But at least we can finish this bab. So we left off last week where Ibn Abi Zayd described the adab of Islam as being encapsulated in four particular ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And those four ahadith were what? They were the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying that whoever believes in Allah in the last day, let him say good or let him stay silent. And the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's from the beauty of the Islam of a man that he should leave those things that don't concern him. And the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the man who asked him for advice, that he gave him the advice of not getting angry. And the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that one of you will not believe until he loves for his brother that which he loves for himself. So Ibn Abi Zayd continues, وَلَا يَحِلُّ لَكَ أَن تَتَعَمَّدَ سَمَاعَ الْبَاطِلِ كُلِّهِ. So it is not permissible for you to intentionally listen to the batil, to falsehood. Batil is falsehood, or that thing that has no benefit or no meaning. And in general, this should be taken, ضد الحق, the thing that is the antonym for haq. Haq is reality and truth. Batil is falsehood. And Nafrawi writes in his commentary, كالشهادة الباطلة أو الغيبة والنميمة أو القذف, like the listening to somebody who is bearing false witness, basically a liar, or a person who is backbiting or tale-bearing, or a person who is making the false accusation of fornication against somebody. And for the legal purposes of Islam, for the sacred law of Islam, that includes the accusation which is not corroborated by four witnesses. So a person may very well have seen what they saw, but the Sharia will legally consider it to be false witness until and unless it can be corroborated by four other witnesses. And if you can't bring those, three other witnesses, if you can't bring three other upright witnesses who witnessed the act of penetration, like the thread goes through the eye of the needle, you'd best just shut up. You'd best just keep your mouth closed. And even to listen to that is haram. And it's interesting, we live in the U2 age, in the Me Too age, and women have very legitimate grievances against men in terms of the society that we live in and in general. And those grievances are based in some real bogus situations, and many times it's not all just made up, or it's not all just some sort of like conspiracy to depose men from their position in society. And even if it's being used as that by some people, not that I'm saying it is, but even if one were to ala sabil al-fard hypothetically say that it's being used as that, it would be used very effectively. Why? Because it's based on something legitimate. Because a lie is, it takes power and it takes legitimacy from being mixed with the truth. But the lie is like najasa, a little bit of lie mixed in a lot of truth makes the entire thing filthy. And so we have to be very careful that when somebody accuses another person of zina, of fornication, that's not something that we entertain lightly. And our Sharia has a standard for that accusation. And zina is different than rape. But even there are standards. And the sad thing is that nobody really bothered to study these things or learn these things. And the society that results where these types of accusations are thrown about haphazardly or nonchalantly, or considered just to be a footnote of freedom of speech. These things, they ruin lives. They ruin men's lives. They ruin women's lives. And the Sharia comes with great mercy, which is what? Either you come with the proof overwhelming or you shut the heck up. You keep your mouth shut. And we don't ruin the lives of women, and we don't ruin the lives of men by speculating about their personal lives. And we don't open the door for rumors and for gossip in order to ruin the lives of people who may or may not be good. That's between them and Allah, but at any rate, they're functional. And so let every person protect themselves, and thereafter not indulge in even listening to that type of scandal mongering. And this is obviously, all of these are general rules. There are exceptions. If you're going to hire somebody for a position of amana or for trust, then perhaps it's in your interest to find out what's going on. And if somebody makes a improper accusation, that may, that's still improper, but you may not want to hire them to be in that position of trust. But those are exceptions. Those are not the rules. And most people don't have to deal with those things. Alhamdulillah, they don't have to deal with those things. And they should just leave these things alone. But that's definitely not the only type of batil out there. There are many other forms of batil. Many opinions on the news, forwarding random WhatsApp messages, forwarding random resharing random Facebook posts, random tweets, random things that people are saying. These things all fall underneath this category, and it's poison for the heart. It's not only a sin that you'll have to pay for on the Day of Judgment, but it kills the heart as well. And so listening to batil includes keeping company with the people of kufr and listening unnecessarily to their ideas about those things. Yes, if you're an academic, you're a researcher, you're a scholar, you have some reason to do so, that's fine. If you want to listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about, whether Pluto is a planet or not, go right ahead, knock yourself out. But, listening too much about, these people's weird materialistic ideas about what they believe the nature of the universe is, which is not something that their science teaches them about anyway. They're completely unqualified to talk about those things one way or the other. This is harmful, and you will be harmed by it. And it is a sin, and there's harm in it. And we're not saying that it's, don't listen to them because we are scared that they may have a point. It's very clear that they don't. And if you think they may have a point, go ahead and investigate. But once it's clear that they don't have a point, don't beat yourself up, and don't constantly subject yourself to the Chinese water torture of nonsense that the news, that the media, that friends, family, that different sources will bombard you with. If it's batil, just leave it. And if, again, like I said, if you have some sort of genuine doubt about it, go ahead and investigate your doubts. But once you come to a conclusion, then thereafter leave it. And when it comes to people speaking about each other, gossiping about each other, ghiba, namima, qadf, these things, backbiting, tale-bearing, or false accusation of sexual impropriety, or fornication in particular, then if a person is able to, in that gathering, to stop the speech about that topic, they're obliged to do so. And if they're not able to, they should get up and leave. And if for whatever reason they're unable to leave, then the commandment of the Qur'an itself is what? Is that a person should distract their attention and not pay attention to what those people are talking about until they change the topic. That's a combination between the legal hukum of not listening and between the understanding of protecting your heart from the poison of listening to that batil. And on the flip side, there's hard batil and there's soft batil. There's hard falsehood and there's soft falsehood. What's hard falsehood? If you're in a group of people and they're talking about the virtues of idol worship, right? And one can say, yes, don't listen to them. But the soft batil is what? Shaitan has a number of different masalik, a number of different ways that he gets into the person's heart. I believe it's Sultan al-Ulama Izz ibn Abdus Salam. He mentions that, like, if a qawm is mubtala, they're people who transact in usury, then the alim who gets up and gives a khutbah about how horrible fornication is, that person has betrayed them. Meaning what? It doesn't mean that fornication is good or it's okay. But the point is that that person has taken the opportunity to set things straight, and that person has deviated it and has completely wasted it, so as to block the truth that's needed in that moment from coming. And there are many scholars, and there are many da'is, du'at, people who, I guess, are the face of Islam and the preachers of Islam and the ambassadors of Islam that will do that. We no longer have a state, and we no longer have endowments that fund our imams or our seats of knowledge and learning. So it's become a business. In America, it's a non-profit corporations are just another type of corporation. So it's a race for funding from the general public. And like everything else which is democratized, we don't democratize medicine. We don't have a vote about whether or not we believe that AIDS is a disease. Those are objective facts, and the whole institution of scholarship is based on the idea that there's a Qur'an and a Sunnah, and they should be learned, and there are certain facts about them that are objective, and there are certain things about them that are debatable. But even then, there's a scope within which they're debated. It's not a complete free-for-all. And the ulama are the ones who set the boundaries of our civilization and our daily lives. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ meant when he said the ulama are the warathatul anbiya. They are the inheritors, the heirs of the Prophets ﷺ. That's what Allah Ta'ala meant when he said, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people who of remembrance if you don't know. And that's what Allah Ta'ala meant when he said, لَوْلَا نَفَرَ مِن كُلِّ فِرْقَةٍ طَائِفَةٍ لِيَتَفَقَّهُوا فِي الدِّينِ إِذَا رَجَعُوا إِلَيْهِمْ لطائفة ليتفقهوا في الدين ولينذر قومهم إذا رجعوا إليهم لعلهم يحذرون. That let not every single person go out in the path of Allah. Rather, let a band of people stay behind and exert themselves with an extraordinary exertion in order to understand the deen with great depth. And then when those people who went out in the path of Allah come back, this former group of people can warn the latter group when they leave the boundaries of the deen, so that they can fear Allah Ta'ala properly. And it's very different than what we have nowadays. We have a lot of people who are, mashallah, they're bearded and hijabbed out lullabies. They are telling people exactly what they want to hear, and they're not telling people what they need to hear. And this is a type of soft batil as well. There are many people who recite the Qur'an with melodious tones, and it's just a lullaby. It's trying to get the heart to go to sleep. It's trying to get the ruh to go to sleep, so people can enjoy, and they can enjoy nasheeds, those nasheeds that I also enjoy. They can enjoy the recitation of the Qur'an. That recitation I also enjoy. They can enjoy going to those masajid. Those masajid I also enjoy going to. They can enjoy all sorts of things. But those people are blocked from ever being told the things that they need for their islah, for their own rectification. This is also a type of batil that that's become unfortunately rife in our age, and then it is a stepping stone for even worse things when people just start making up things about the deen. But it's sufficient. A person doesn't necessarily have to be saying anything wrong in order to be speaking batil. Oftentimes it's like a chess move that a person will move a piece in order to block another move from the opposing side. And if that other move from the opposing side is a move in the right direction, then this is something very very disconcerting. And unfortunately, regular people are not in a position to be able to evaluate this. But if you have a little bit of ilm, you have a little bit of knowledge, and you notice that people are giving very motivational, very uplifting, very well-produced, very attractive messages, very muzayyan and muzakhraf, very ornate and aesthetically pleasing messages that have very little content that is based in wahi and based in the revelation that came down in the Prophet ﷺ, or based on just common types of things that there's nothing actionable from, that there's nothing that will actually change and will not force the ego to exert itself in order to submit to Allah Ta'ala. Obviously, submission to Allah Ta'ala for the ego and for the mind and for the body from the spirit is what Islam is. That's what Islam means. It means to submit. They have the uncles, they come in the interfaith gatherings, they say that Islam is peace. It's not peace. What is it? It's submission. Submission. And so if there's something which is empowering the nafs and it's not pushing it towards submission, then I consider this type of batil as well, soft batil, where you don't pinpoint a particular thing someone is saying, but you are obstructing the haqq from being spoken. And a person should be careful before they go and just cast this accusation at somebody, because the nafs also cannot take a beating every single day of the week. So there may be some times where a sheikh or a murabbi or a murshid will administer things like this to his flock and to his herd. Why? Because the two wings on which the deen of a person flies are the targhib and the tarhib, encouragement and the deterrent of fear. And so you can't be all fear all the time either. That also becomes a nightmare. But in a holistic picture, if you see that a person is basically just squawking a whole bunch of nothing, and it's fancy nothing and it sounds good nothing, but at the end of the day it's just all nothing, then this is a sign Allah Ta'ala protect us. This is a sign Allah Ta'ala protect us from this. And I remember one of the ulama, he mentioned this, that he said, my father was a great muqri. He was a great muqri of the people of Central Asia. And he said that I once listened to a particular qari recite the Qur'an in the Salat al-Taraweeh. And I said, man, this guy is so great. He's so wonderful. And my father, said to me, he says, this person that you're praising and extolling, all he's doing is he's hired by the people of batil in order to put the ummah to sleep, to distract them from the things that they need to do. And he said, I thought inside of my heart, I said, why is my father saying this? Why is he being a hater? And then he said that Allah gave me enough time. I understood now what he's saying, that person is a complete sellout, and that person justifies and peddles those things, from batil that nobody else does, and he does it with a smile. And unfortunately, we have a number of scholars who are doing that in this time, in this age. And I can't say that they don't have sanad, and I can't say that they're deviants, and I can't even say that they don't have knowledge. But their smiles are completely for sale, and their knowledge is completely, it's for sale. And Allah protect us from such people. Allah protect us from such people, because that wolf, when it gets into the flock like that, there's very little we have in terms of protection for ourselves from them. Allah Ta'ala protect us. And this is not the rule. The rule is that the ulama, the people of knowledge, are upright and pious people. But every now and again, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will try a qawm and try a person through his knowledge. And that person, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala protect us from such people. وَلَا أَن تَتَلَذَّذَ بِسَمَاعِ كَلَامِ امْرَأَةٍ. And Allah Ta'ala also makes it haram for a person to take pleasure in hearing the speech of a woman. And obviously, this is written in pre-political correctness, but the mafhum, the understood meaning of this, is also for a woman too. take pleasure in hearing the speech of a man, لا تحل لك, that for you to take pleasure in this listening to the speech of a woman that's not from your maharim, and it's not halal for you. And if you're a woman, then the converse also, it applies to a man. And I remember a couple of years ago in a major conference, I wrote like a blog post about it or something like that, that people made a real big deal about, like, oh, look, this is the first time that a session of some conference was opened with a female Qur'an reciter. And I think these things, they get ridiculous after a while. I'm completely in favor of justice and completely in favor of fairness with our sisters, with our brothers, with our elders, with our youngers, with our children, with people of every race, every socioeconomic background. And this is one of the proudest traditions of our mashayikh as well. Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanwi rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions this. He said that if I became the hakim, if Allah Ta'ala gave me rulership and I had the power of enforcement in my hands, the first thing I would do is I would start to rectify the wrongs against women that are happening in society. And anyone who knows anything about Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanwi knows that he's not like a third-wave feminist, and he's not doing it to pander for clicks or followers on Facebook. He passed from this world none of his direct khulafa are alive, and very few of the khulafa of his khulafa are alive, not so many of them. And so he passed in the early part of the 1900s, and so he passed before India and Pakistan were relieved of the yoke of Farangi occupation. And why did he say this though? Because these were people of basira, of vision. They saw over the horizon that something is happening, because the dhulm of our sisters is, people have been getting away with it so long. The spring is tightening up, and pow, when it hits, it's going to completely destroy. The fabric of family, and the fabric of family, which is the basic unit of civilization in the prophetic model. And that's what happens. That's the jaza. That's the jaza of dhulm. That's the recompense of transgression, is that it will pop back and it will hit you, and it will pay you in full, and what mazid, it will hit you even more than what was put into it. And that's the tax that people are forced to pay when they ignore dhulm from going on for so long. And so Hazrat Thanvi was not a third wave feminist. If you want to accuse me of that, you can. I guess comically there are a few people who accuse me of pandering to feminists. It's ridiculous. It's laughable. Go ask any feminist, is this Hamza like your spokesperson? And they'll be like, that's, we don't say things because of these modernist movements or against these modernist movements. This is one of the reasons, by the way, I'm completely freaked out by all of these, mashallah, young defenders of Islam and defenders of traditionalism who don't bother to learn Arabic and don't bother to learn Sarf and don't bother to learn Nahu and don't bother to read any books, because in their zeal to refute whatever modernist ideologies, they actually ignored learning what the deen is. And if the deen says something that's in line with modernism or in line with feminism or whatever, no skin off our back. The deen is the deen. It's the haqq. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. So at any rate, the reason for mentioning Hazrat Thanvi is that we're not proponents of the suppression or oppression of women, or go to the back of the bus or whatever. Rather, the deen gives a different theoretical framework for how the honor and the proper respect of a woman is, and how the proper honor and respect of a man is. And so to put a woman in the position of a man, it cheapens her. And for a woman, her access is restricted. She doesn't give access to herself to her picture, to her voice. She doesn't give access to herself to everybody. The great women rulers of the Muslim tradition understood this. And so we mentioned from before the great princesses that ruled Bhopal in central India. These were some of the most wealthy and powerful people in the world. When they ruled, they would rule from behind the lattice. They would not allow anyone to see them. They would see all of the litigants and disputants and petitioners to the court, but no one would see them. No one would hear them. This is frustrating beyond imagine to the colonizer. And one of the first agendas of the colonizer, in order to destroy the civilization of the Muslims, the basic unit of which is the family, was what? Was to take this power away from the sisters and take this dignity away from the sisters. And so he mentions this right now. So I wrote this article back in the day about why this is not some sort of triumph. This is like a complete, like applying a standard which is foreign and alien to our tradition, and actually antithetical to our tradition, and then trying to take pride in it. I'm not against women reciting Qur'an, but I don't think it's a matter of pride that like a woman should be out there in public and like expose herself to everybody. That's against what the Deen teaches about the dignity of a woman and the dignity of our sisters, and for a number of reasons. And so I wrote this article, and I said this. I mentioned this, by the way, that it's haram for a man to listen to the voice of a woman if he's going to take pleasure from it. And in general, that's what happens. And one of the objections I received to this article, which was, by the way, brought up by people very politely, and not, some people kind of came with the haterade, and we expect that, and curiously are not as fazed about it. But one of the very polite objections that was made was that, well, what if a man recites Quran with a melodious voice and a woman enjoys it? Why is it that the men are not told don't recite because it may be a fitna for the women? And the answer to that was what? Is that it is a necessity for the men to congregate. It is a necessity for the men to keep the ijtima'i and the collective communal life of the community going like that. Whereas women are not obliged to do those things. Women are not obliged to go and pray in the congregation. Women are not obliged to, fight in wars. Women are not obliged to enforce stuff outside of the house. A woman is not obliged to pay for or support anybody, not her children, not her parents. Doesn't matter how poor they are and how rich she is, not her brothers and sisters. The entire Sharia's approach to that is different. And it doesn't mean that necessarily women can't do those things. In some cases it does. In some cases it definitely discourages it, but there's some door open. In some cases there are ways that those things can happen, but those are not the hard and fast rules for the women, that they have to do those things. Those responsibilities fall on the shoulder of the men. And so if the men have to be there for those communal matters, that's why the men will recite, and that's why the men will speak in public. And that's why they receive priority, because it's a fitna that they have to do those things in the first place. Now, what is it? We have like a completely ass-backward system where people are fighting each other in order to speak in public. And that hubbur riyasa, love of leadership, that in and of itself is a sin. The Prophet ﷺ warned us it will push a person toward halak, toward destruction. But people are very apt and very ready to get out there and to give the khutbah and to speak in public and to be seen and to be whatever. And this whole desire for self-evaluation through the adulation of others, this whole idea that there is somebody else who can go forward, step forward and speak, so why should I speak? Why should I put myself in spiritual danger as well as in physical danger? The Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who said, "Ista'inu ala injahi hajatikum bi kitman al-umur," or kama qala alayhi salatu wasalam. He said that seek help in fulfilling your needs by keeping a low profile, by not showing your cards to everybody all the time. This is why the companions, radiallahu anhum, when there were like several of them sitting around, if someone asked for a fatwa, they said, go ask that person. Whereas, a person who is simple-minded will say, well, I want to get the reward of answering the question. Okay, that's simple-mindedness. Even that, there's very few people, because if someone genuinely wants the reward, you can tell them, look, there's somebody more qualified than you to answer the question. By sending the questioner to that person, you'll get even more reward. If the person genuinely wants the reward, that will suffice for them. But if a person wants to be out there and wants to be seen, then they won't do that. And I don't know, like, I have enough. I'm not, immune to any of these things. People are, probably saying, oh, why do you have a YouTube video channel and you're saying these things and you retweet your own self and you whatever, you advertise your programs and blah, blah, blah. Look, wallah, if there was somebody to like read this Kitab Jami and tell me who's reading it right now, if there's somebody who's reading it, then I'll stop my dars. And one of the ways around this, because somebody has to get up and say something, somebody has to get up and do something. And the system that we have in our deen is that people used to take discipleships. They used to become students of mashayikh in ilm, in knowledge. And then they would take discipleships in the spiritual path as well. They would take bay'ah with a sheikh. Now people are too cool to have a ustad in knowledge that actually they engage with for a significant amount of time. They'll take like an online course once a week for, with somebody for like 2 years and say, oh, I studied with Sheikh so-and-so for 2 years. That's not how you build a relationship with a teacher. Don't take this YouTube class and be, oh, I read this and that from Sheikh Hamza. If I haven't seen your face before, I'm not going to vouch for you. And people ask me for ijazat. I go, what do you want ijazah for? I go, come, you want to study, come and study. I go, why the heck would you want to come and study with me? Most of my teachers are still alive. You can still go study with them. You can become equal to me or higher because you're probably going to put in more time and effort in learning. You'll come to me and point out my mistakes. How many times has that happened? Mufti Abrar Koya, he's sitting in like Scarborough, Ontario, or something like that. He came as a HIF student and he taught him and Maulana Mazhar Patel, who is Imam in Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Peoria. The two of them, they came to me and they led the Salatul Tarawih when I was Imam in Chico, California. And so I said, if you guys want to learn some books, I'll teach you. They're madrasa students at that time. So we read the Manzuma Bayquniya. In fact, I'll go and show you. Very, very, very interesting, fun stuff. Just so you guys know that ilm is like a living process. It's not dead. It's not fronting bakwas. This is the copy I got of the Manzuma Bayquniya when I was reading in Al-Ain from my ustad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him long life and increase him in every khair. It's the Hashia of Atiyatul Ajhuri on Zurqani's Sharh of the Bayquniya. And here are my handwritten notes. That title on the top, by the way, was written by me by hand with a calligraphy pen, although the matan is printed, but these are the handwritten notes. And obviously, the Ahlul Athar, the Ahlul Athar have a different approach to hadith than the Malikis and the Hanafis do. So, I took copious notes and I taught them. Well, guess what? This Abrar Koya went on to go and do, mashallah, Mufti Abrar went on to go do takhasus in hadith with Sheikh Yunus Jaunpuri in Saharanpur, who was sat in the Masnad by Sheikh al-Hadith Maulana Zakaria rahimahullah ta'ala. Taught Bukhari over 40 times from beginning to end, and was recognized as one of the top muhaddithin of the subcontinent and of the world. Copious notes, exacting researcher, and he beat his students into the floor in order to make them into very well-read people. Even in Chicago, we have our Maulana Abdurrahman Haji, who teaches at Dar al-Qasim. These guys, I'm not going to mess with them when it comes to ilm in general, much less when it comes to the ilm of hadith. And so yeah, go learn, come back, and you don't have to learn from me. The point is that I put them forward now. Someone comes to me with a question about hadith, right? I'm not going to say, oh, look, I taught him the Bayquniya, I know more than him. No, I'm going to say, what? These guys, they ended up studying way more than I did afterward. Now they're the experts of hadith. If you have a question, go ask Mufti Abrar in Toronto. Go ask this Maulana Abdurrahman Haji. right? The fact that they're younger than me or any of those things, they mean nothing, because what they actually went bothered and went to learn. But now what is it? It's the flip side. It's everybody. I have something to say. I'm going to benefit the ummah. I'm going to benefit the ummah. You benefit the ummah. Go make dua. You're going to benefit the ummah. Go clean the bathrooms in the masjid, in the madrasa. Well, how come you tell other people to do it? You don't do it yourself. Forget about me. The great ulama, we've seen them cleaning the bathroom in the madrasa. It's not just a figure of speech. It's a reality. And so what happens is you clean the bathrooms and you keep going to dars if the sheikhs tell you to go to dars, and then one day if they give you ijazah and say go and teach this now in such and such place, then you're not doing it out of your own volition, you're doing it because they said so. Now what is it? Well, how come the brothers get to recite at the beginning of the thing, we can't? They forget about this. It has nothing to do with you being a sister. This has something to do with you being a nafs, okay? Even if a brother is like, how come that brother gets to recite? I want to recite. We'll say this is a crookedness inside of you. This is a crookedness inside of you. Allah gives you the reward based on your intention. If you're like, why not me? Why not me? I have to put myself forward. Allah have mercy on our entire qawm, you know. Go ahead, go. You know, one day someone will give you fatwa. You can even give the khutbah if you want to. The sisters, you can go ahead and give the khutbah if you want to. If you don't have concern, and it's not just the sisters, the brothers, everybody, right? If you don't have concern for the basic asas of the deen, the foundational things in the deen, and you want to be the one who you know, gives the khutbah. If you're a brother or you're a sister may have you know, some slight impediment of the sharia. The brothers also have other impediments in the sharia as well. This particular one they may not have, but all of them, they'll dispense with them and push themselves forward anyway. And that's like problematic. That's highly, and I'm not saying the sister, a particular sister who recited at Isma, this is like her problem or whatever, but afterward, I go to many MSAs and sisters like, well, how come the brothers get to speak? How come the brothers get to recite? How come they're the ones who get to do this? How come that we want to do it as well? I go, well, this is a problem with them. I always give them a tongue lashing. That why are you guys, you know, obsessed? Nobody wants to go to dars. No one wants to learn anything. No one wants to make sacrifice. No one wants to make mujahada. Nobody wants to visit the ulama, much as take from them. Everybody wants to give the khutbah. Everybody wants to be you know, out in front. And if you do it in your dunya, it's one thing, you know, it's still problematic. You do it in your deen. Allah help us all. So he says, وَلَا أَنْتَ تَلَذَّذَ بِسَمَاعِ كَلَامِ امْرَأَةٍ لَا تَحِلُّ لَكَ. So the answer to the question is, well, what if a sister finds a man's voice attractive? It's also haram. Don't go to those meetings. If the voice of a man is a fitna for you, don't go. That's not halal for you. Don't go to those meetings. If you like him, get married. You know, and if it's a fitna for you afterward, don't subject yourself to the poison of that gathering. And men also don't do that. Don't be like, oh, look, you know, with all due respect to our sisters, you know, and in the past, many of our brothers have been very tactless in dealing with this issue. But like, you know, I'm not a big fan of the sisters addressing like mixed gatherings and when I say mixed, I don't mean like khalt. I shouldn't say mixed gathering, but gatherings in which both genders are permitted. If the gathering is mixed, it's haram anyway, right? But even if they're separated, gatherings in which both genders are there in the masjid, you know, if you want to do it in a hall or somewhere, people don't have to come if they don't want to. It becomes a fitna for them. But in the masjid, it's not appropriate. Why? Because the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if somebody is going to go there and they're going to, you know, experience something that will poison them spiritually, that's not a good thing. And people say, well, how come the women have to bear the burden of men's doing this and that? I don't see it that way at all. I don't see it that way at all, because the whole underlying assumption of that question is that somehow, you know, the speaking in front of people is some sort of like sanctioned benefit that like everyone will get good from. Whereas most of the people who get up in front of the mic, they're going to say something that's going to be an embarrassment for them the Yawm al-Qiyamah, and it will drag them into Jahannam. And there's someone else who can say what they're saying. And if there isn't, then that's an exception. Let them go ahead and say that thing. But the rule is the rule from our Aslaf is that's not considered. It wasn't considered a good thing that people used to fight over to put themselves forward and be the face that's seen by everybody. And so you know, and unfortunately there are those who will then call names with great immaturity. They will call names, you know, to the people who wish to have separation in the masjid, they'll say, oh, such and such people are prepubescent and they don't have control over themselves and stuff. For a lot of people have control over themselves in the masjid, in the mall, but when they get to the masjid they become horny, and but then it gets stupid types of things that people say. It's not about that. It's about not tainting the purity of the masjid, because a man is attracted to a woman and a woman is attracted to a man. That's the basic rule Allah Ta'ala has made. And some people have higher sensitivity and some people have lower sensitivity, but in general that's the rule. And to ignore it, people do it at their own peril. And if you don't believe me, go ask the Catholic Church. ولا سماع شيء من الملاهي والغناء, and nor is it permissible for a person to listen to anything from the musical instruments. And this is the fatwa position of the the four madhabs, to my knowledge, is the prohibition of listening, the general prohibition of listening to musical instruments. And there may be exceptions, particular exceptions to the rule, but that's in general what it is. And that's something people who want to be academically honest have to be honest about that. And so he mentions شيء من الملاهي كالمزمار والطنبور والعود. So he mentions the different musical instruments, and he mentions some exceptions like the daf that's beaten in order to tell people or inform people that a marriage happened, or to make some sort of announcement that it's, and even then it's not music, but it's dum dum dum, someone got married, dum dum, someone got married. The crier will use it as a way of getting people's attention. And Malik rahimahullah ta'ala was very clear about this. His fatwa was very clear about this. And Malik also did not appreciate singing songs to the point where it moves the heart to things that it shouldn't be moved to. He considered it to be an aib. He considered it to be a defect in a slave girl. When purchasing a slave, if the slave girl knows how to sing, he considered it to be a defect that the purchaser should be informed of. Obviously, the buying and selling of slaves is something like culturally offensive to most people nowadays. So I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying that he considered the fact that the girl knew how to sing to be a defect. Why? Because it's an indicator of low moral quality. The text of the Risala continues, ولا قراءة القرآن باللحون المرجعة كترجيع الغناء ويجل كتاب الله العزيز أن يتلى بسكينة ووقار. And so وما يوقن أن الله تبارك وتعالى يرضى به. So he mentions this. He says even reciting the Quran, and this is Malik's fatwa, even reciting the Quran in the voice of a singer. He says that also it's not permissible to recite or listen to the Quran in the voice of a singer, but tarji'. And so what I surmise tarji' means here is like the vibrato, or like crescendos, where you make it louder or softer, or you do what they call vibrato in music, whereas like a slight oscillation in the tone, or perhaps even a greater oscillation in tones. And this is interesting because this, if you want to read more about it, read in the first volume of the Tafsir Qurtubi. He goes to bat for this opinion as well, and this opinion is not practiced by a majority of the people in the Sharq, in the Western Arab lands, or in the rest of the Muslim world. If you go to Mauritania, the adhan is given very plainly, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, like that. It's given relatively plainly. And even when you go and pray in the masajid, the prayer of the imam, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'een, Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim, Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim, غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. And that's that. You know, they recite relatively plainly, and that's how they've been reciting, and that's how the adhan has been called in the Maghrib for centuries. And in fact, they say that the Maghariba, when going to visit the Sharq in greater numbers in recent times, people would come back and start to give the adhan in the way that the hit single R&B solo artist style of the Mashriqi people, of the people in the eastern lands of the Arabs. And the fuqaha, got together and they're like, no. And there's actually a ban. That's why if you go to fast, to this day, the adhan is relatively straightforward. But these are things that culturally they may slip in from one place or the other, and I don't know what it's like over there now. But that's what I remember when I went in, like, whatever, the early 2000s, 2003. This is based on the fiqh of Malik, that he considered that not to be okay, and even Qurtubi, he mentions this. He dedicates a reasonable amount of the muqaddimah of his tafsir to the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Laysa minna man lam yataghanna bil Qur'ani." That person is not one of us who doesn't make taghanni with the Qur'an. And so the word taghanni, the Imam Shafi'i and many of the other scholars, they said that this means to recite it in a nice singing voice, because ghina, ughniya is like a song, and ghina can mean to sing. And Qurtubi, who is himself a muhaddith and a lughawi, an expert in the Arabic language, and just a person, a a person who brings together just different types of virtue and mastery and learning. Just an encyclopedic person. Really, the Tafsir Qurtubi is such a beautiful book, and it's all business. Like, every word of it is something that's useful. I really feel like if somebody were not to study anything else, but they were just to memorize Qurtubi from back to forth, they would have enough fiqh, enough aqidah, enough of knowledge of the Arabic language, enough of like a lot of things just to be like a very great scholar. So imagine the person who wrote it. But Qurtubi writes this. I mean, he says that here, taghanni doesn't mean to recite in a singing voice. Rather, it means istighna, to be free of need of anything else. The meaning of the hadith is that the person who isn't sufficed from the Quran to the point where he's free of need of other than it, that person isn't one of us. And that's a very different meaning obviously, than others take. And then he will make rad. He'll refute the idea that a person should or can sit and recite Quran in very artistic modes that the mashariqa will do, reciting in maqams or in other scales and things like that. And it's definitely, it's a difference of opinion between the ulama. But if you want to know what Malik's opinion is, this is what Malik's opinion is. And then afterward, if you choose one opinion or the other, you can do so. But one must respect the fact that Imam Malik was from the Salaf, and he was very particular in doing things the way that the ulama, the Salaf, did them. And he really despised this. And it's the fact that he despised it to that point is a sign that that's not how they used to recite in the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The ulama and the mashayikh of the Salaf, that's not how they used to recite. And that should be something that's respected. And I think even for a person who takes the other opinion that's not so strict, that you have to recite in a relatively monotonous or at least simple tone, one should take a ibrah from this, take a warning, take heed from this, that overly operatic performances of the Quran distract a person from what the meaning is. And there are some reciters that recite uh, really in such an operatic way, and they stretch the mudud so much that you barely remember what the first word of the ayah is by the time you get to the middle of it or by the time you get to the end of it. And this is a point that actually Ibn Abi Zayd makes here. He says that it's not permissible to listen to the Quran being sang and with the oscillations and the scales of singers, like the oscillation of singers in their song, and rather let a person magnify the book of Allah Ta'ala. Let them respect the book of Allah. And yutla illa bis sakina wa waqar, that a person shouldn't make a performance out of it. Rather, it should be recited in a very with sakina, with like the serenity of the holy presence of the Lord, and waqar, with gravity. It shouldn't be America's Got Talent type recitation. وَمَا يُوقِنُ أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَرْضَى بِهِ, and in such a simple way that there's no ostentation or showing off or pride, or I'm inserting my own artisticness into this or whatever, so it can be like I'm doing it my way. Do that with your art. Go make a painting or something if that's what you want to do. Go and write a novel. ويتقرب منه مع إحضار الفهم لذلك. And so if a person wishes to get closer to Allah Ta'ala through it, let them do it by being present in understanding when they do that. Be present in understanding when they do that. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala give us tawfiq. Inshallah, I think if I start discussing the next mas'ala, let's go ahead and do it just in order to be able to finish before the beginning of Ramadan. ومن الفرائض الأمر بالمعروف والنهي عن المنكر على كل من بسطت يده في الأرض. And from the commandments of Deen, the obligations of Deen, is to command that which is right and to forbid that which is evil. And it is upon everybody whose hand stretches in the earth. And this expression of the hand stretches in the earth, يعني انتشر حكمه لكونه سلطانا أو أميرا أو قاضيا, that anyone who has the right sovereign authority of enforcing orders, that person, it's an obligation on them. And sovereignty is obviously a complete package, but a person, the point to which they have authority is the point to which they're obliged to command to that which is right and forbid that which is evil. And so there are many things in which, like a father in his household, or a teacher inside of his classroom, or a person who is put in a position of authority or respect, that they have to command to that which is right and forbid that which is evil. And it's not just the rulers. There are two sides of this coin. One side is what is the more important side, is that of the ulama, that the ulama have to keep saying the haqq. They have to keep saying the truth and keep teaching it, keep preserving it, keep moving it, and dispersing it to their students and to the public, and to the umara, and to the rulers. And then the rulers are the ones that have to enforce it. The rulers don't get to say what is right and what is wrong. That's the ulama are the ones who decide that. And if they fudge that up or they screw that up, that's their fault, and they're going to take a beating for it in the hereafter. Wal-iyadhu billah, Allah Ta'ala protect everyone from that. And then on the flip side, the umara, the people who have sovereign authority, the rulers, they're obliged to take that knowledge and then enforce it in the way that they see as best, according to the different opinions of the different ulama that they take. and they won't be held responsible if the ulama feed them bum information, just like the ulama won't be responsible if they say the haqq to the rulers and then the rulers don't enforce it, until or unless the ulama actually are in a position to take power, which has happened from time to time in Muslim history, and it's not always been good, actually, by the way, interestingly enough. There have been people of great knowledge who have taken power, and sometimes they make really bad rulers, sometimes because of their incompetence and sometimes just because they're evil people, للأسف الشديد. But the point is that even though one apple may go bad, in general the corpus of ulama are preserved, inshallah, from that. But people who idealize history too much, there are two types of people: those who idealize history, and then there's those who actually read it. And so you can listen to my snarky comments, and then if you would like to increase your level of snarkitude, you can call up our various colleagues. Firas Khatib, inshallah, would be very happy to shoot down your fantasies of some sort of unicorn magical caliphate. The caliphate was wonderful as long as the Khulafa Rashidun ruled, in the sense that they're morally vindicated, although some very messed up stuff happened, but it wasn't the Rashidun who did it, it was other people who did it that made that era messed up in different ways, at different times. But then afterward, Allah help us all, it's a very human project. This whole Islam, this whole Ummah is a very human project. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open the doors of understanding, of piety and righteousness, and shut the doors of ignorance and of evil, and protect us from our own nufus. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala empower those people whose hearts are aligned to the higher realm. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chain up those shayateen who are can't help themselves but be evil. And we'll move on from there. وعلى كل من تصل يده إلى ذلك. So whoever, this is an obligation on whoever's sovereign authority is there in the land, and whoever their hand can reach to, meaning whoever their sovereign authority can reach to. That if they see something wrong, they're obliged to rectify it. فإن لم يقدر فبلسانه فإن لم يقدر فبقلبه. That person is, every person is obliged to this, commanding that which is right and forbidding that which is evil. And if a person doesn't have sovereign authority and doesn't have reach in enforcing their commands, which most of us are in this situation, then that still doesn't mean that person is absolved from speaking and encouraging through their words good things that are happening, and chastising people for bad things that are happening with their words. And if a person is in a situation that they can't do that anymore, Allah Ta'ala protect us, 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 and thwart the evil plans and evil designs and evil intentions that our enemies have against us. Allah Ta'ala protect us and let us live and die speaking the haqq and free from the yoke of oppression of our enemies and from those who hate our deen and who hate the haqq and hate the truth. Then that person is at least obliged to hate it in their heart. They're never allowed to love it. And that's something really scary when you see a Muslim who looks at kufr or looks at batil and they like it. You can be if someone is listening and they're an alcoholic, they know how it is to be addicted to drinking, but to hate the alcohol. And maybe that person hates the alcohol more than a person who's never taken a sip of alcohol in their life, because they know the reality of it. And how sad and how much of a tragedy is it when a person, because the heart is the kingdom that nobody can violate. It's the sanctum of meaning that no army, no weapons, no guns, no money, nothing can screw that up. It's the only thing that can change what's inside of it is you. And so how much of a tragedy is it if a person should accept the batil in that heart, because there's nobody you can pass the buck to afterward. And if you're not able to speak out against it, if you're not able to change it with your hands, you're not able to speak out against it, then at least you have to detest that evil in your heart, or at least you have to love that good inside of your heart. Corona is not going to allow the masajid to pray Jummah for some time now, it seems. and it may not allow masajid to gather together people for tarawih. But you at least love those things inside of your heart. You at least love those things inside of your heart, right? There's no coronavirus. No one's going to get infected by you loving the idea of the congregation of tarawih or Jummah happening in the heart, right? But that's a sir, it's a secret between you and the Lord, and it will be exposed yawma tubla sara'ir, on the day that the hearts are going to be exposed. That's a secret between you and the Lord, and it will be exposed one day. وفرض على كل مؤمن أن يزيد بكل قول وعمل من البر أن يريد بكل قول وعمل من البر وجه الله الكريم. So this is, I think, a good place to stop, inshallah. We will continue with this topic tomorrow night. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rectify our shortcomings. Allah ta'ala forgive us if I said anything that shouldn't be said. But inshallah, Allah ta'ala open the doors of understanding for all of us, inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lift this calamity from our heads and give us our Jum'ah, and give us our entering and exiting the masajid in peace, and the Umrah and the Hajj and the Haramain Sharifain. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lift the calamity, Corona and otherwise, from the heads of the believers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open our hearts so that this Mubarak knowledge can enter into our hearts and make us amongst those people who are benefited by it in their deen and in their akhirah and in their dunya and in all of their states, and protect us from ever being those people that it becomes a means for our destruction and a means for our humiliation in this world and the hereafter. وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم ربنا اغفر لنا وارحمنا وتقبل منا ووفقنا لما تحب وترضى به، واختم لنا بالحسنى وارفع بأيدينا راية الإسلام. بركة الفاتحة. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.